Hey, what's up? Brian Bowles here, and welcome to another exciting episode of Navigating the Hustle. I just had an incredible conversation with the person I'm about to introduce to you, Nafissa Shireen. You're going to hear everything we chatted about, and she is an entrepreneur, speaker, and income growth expert specializing in helping female entrepreneurs go well and truly above their current beliefs to take huge steps forward in their income and their lives. And we had a conversation that delved into business mindset, breaking through some limiting beliefs and having some epiphanies there that I can now use in my day-to-day life. And I know you're going to get the value out of that too. She has a ranch in Canada where she built on this ranch. She has horses there. And a big part of her journey as a businesswoman and entrepreneur has been getting to know and work with horses. And in the summer coming over there, it's just finishing summer here in Australia. In the summer coming, she's going to be opening this ranch up to clientele that will have VIP events, group sessions there, and some cool things to do with how a horse understands and knows whether what you say is what you truly mean. And when that comes down to business, if you're still faking it, the horse will know. So I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. A lot of cool stories and learnings in there that she's had along the way. I think it's going to be highly valuable to you and your story. And at the end of this, why not go over, find her on YouTube, on Instagram, send her some love and let her know how much you loved the episode. Apart from that, enjoy our conversations about life, spirituality, horses, and business. And I'll see you on the other side. There goes a sight from my soul. I'm here with Nafissa. Hey, welcome to the show. Super cool to have you on.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited. And, reading over everything that you've accomplished, I think we're going to have some cool conversation. And for starters, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and some of the things that you're passionate about, and maybe a little bit of the journey as to where things started for you in the entrepreneurship world of business and coaching.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I guess it's no secret I'm passionate about horses, but more than anything, what I'm really passionate about is that people are able to do their thing, like whatever that thing is. Mine just happens to be horses, right? And I really believe that anybody can create what they absolutely want. So, if you, any given day, you're going to see me, like today on my lunch break, I was out in my paddocks feeding, walking the horses, and that's what I love to do. That's what makes me happy. But my journey to becoming an entrepreneur was quite an interesting one, because I started out back in 1987 was my first job. I worked for my dad. But
Cool.
In 1990, I went into the world of musical artists, and I was working at a music store where we sold MIDI equipment and pro audio equipment to the local musician community in Vancouver. That's where I met my husband. And so I'd always worked for entrepreneurs for a really, really long time. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the freedom. I enjoyed the ability to make a decision and have something happen. And then I ended up going to school, getting my degree in accounting, becoming a professional accountant, going to work for large corporations. And I loved it. I had such a cool job. I worked up in Alaska. It was a lot of fun. But when I left that, a lot of my development in that role was when I'd hired a coach myself. And I was able to really make leaps and bounds in my professional career as a woman in a man's world. And I really saw the value of coaching. So when I left there, and I left because it was a lot, in the mining industry, there's a lot of industry consolidations and amalgamations, and just things changed. It wasn't the same company anymore. So I left. Coaching was just a natural fit. Entrepreneurship was a natural fit because I missed it. Although I had no experience being an entrepreneur, even though I'd worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. So that was, I had a lot of eye-opening moments when that happened, for sure. Like, I had no idea how to sell. I had no idea how to handle the ups and downs. There's a lot.
Yeah, cool. And so you said your dad had always owned business, and that was the first job you stepped into, right?
Yeah.
Was it, being sort of the 80s, 90s period, I guess now entrepreneurship is completely different, yet it's still the same. What sort of businesses, did he manage, build, grow? Did he have a few? Was there just one?
Well, he wasn't, my dad was more of an entrepreneur, so he worked for other companies that would set up distributorships in Canada. And so then he would run that. So he kind of ran it on his own, but he still had people he was accountable to, like a board of directors or
Okay.
whatever. So he was in the sporting goods wholesale industry, and he imported skis and ski boots from what used to be Yugoslavia, which is now, all the different countries, Slovenia, Croatia. So Slovenia would be where that factory still is.
Wow.
And so I learned there with him, like my work ethic and everything. And it
Right.
was all, but it was very different because this was something where we had people that would go out and sell. It was an established market. And I basically took orders, and I thought that was selling. And I mean, I was
Love that.
17 when I started working for him, so I didn't know,
Sure.
right, anything. So yeah.
And what was the one thing about work ethic that was ingrained into you back then?
So this is interesting because it's totally not what I believe in today.
Right.
But back then it was like you just work and 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 work.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
What is a personal passion, right? And
Sure.
I mean, God love my dad because he gave me the ability to really achieve and strive for it. But it was a pretty warped
Mm.
view. And I carried that into my corporate career, and I definitely carried it into my early days as an entrepreneur.
Wow. So then, I mean, I guess getting into, like you said, the world of accounting,
Mm-hmm.
big hours, how do you then think, okay, what was the breakthrough for you to go, okay, first of all, I need a coach? How did
Mm-hmm.
that come across your path? Because I'm thinking that's going to flip a whole bunch of different dominoes.
Yeah, so this was really interesting because I always considered myself a creative accountant, more creative than accountant.
Right.
I,
Yeah.
like, if you ask me what's 1 + 1, I'm going to tell you what do you want it to be. Let's figure it out, right?
Okay, cool.
I never really followed the rules, and so every role I had, whether I was working for entrepreneurs or working in corporate, I kind of bridged whether it would be operations or sales or whatever the output of the company was with the accounting department. So I sat as that bridge. And for
Yeah.
years, I ended up in this really cool gold mining company, and I'd kind of maxed out at a middle management job,
Mhm.
and I really, really wanted to progress. And so a few years before that, I had gone to see a recruiter, and she gave me some really valuable advice because I was considering dropping out of school at that point, and I had only worked for small entrepreneurs. And she said she primarily worked with Fortune 500 companies, and she saw me more as a fit for the owner operator. Well, I
Right.
got so mad. She's listening to this right now. She knows how much I love her. Um, and I thought, well, I'm going to go get this experience. And I did. And a few years later, I went back and I had a conversation with her, but I can't remember which recruiter placed me where. But a few years later, when I was looking to hire somebody, because I was so appreciative of how she had helped me with just one sentence, I thought, well,
Wow.
I want to give her my business. And so as the hiring manager, I contacted her, found out she'd moved to executive coaching. And
Okay.
I had no idea what that was.
Sure.
And then about a year later, there was an opportunity that I wanted to go for, and I was getting passed over, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. And it was suggested I hire a coach, and I had no idea what it was. And she was the only person I knew. So I called her, and the
Wow.
rest is history. And we worked together for 4 years. She was so instrumental. And, it's interesting. She was instrumental in the early days of my career, just by asking a question or saying something
Hmm.
that changed everything for me. And then as my coach, I progressed so much in my corporate career. I went from making $70,000 a year to one year I did 700,000. Right now,
Wow.
she didn't do the work. I had to become that person, but it was through the coaching, and I
Sure.
saw the power of coaching. I saw where I had to face my stuff, and the part of my job that I always enjoyed the most always was developing other people. It wasn't
Cool.
the numbers. I mean, I really wouldn't have no idea how to do a financial statement today. Like, I have no idea, but I knew how to make business work. And for me, what was more exciting than getting, your financials out on time was seeing people who would start with no experience, grow into a role and move on. And I did a lot of work in human resource development, corporate development, community engagement. And because of
Wow.
my coach, I was able to really step into those things and ask for them,
Okay.
whereas I might have just stayed pigeonholed as an accountant otherwise. So
Yeah.
when I left, and I remember when I left that role, and I was still working with her, and I just, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, I'm your coach. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I want to ask you some questions to think about what you really like. And it
As
kind
every
of,
good coach does, right?
yeah, exactly. And it got me thinking, well, maybe I want to be a coach too. And oh, and I had to go through such an identity crisis to actually go from being like corporate executive to coach. I didn't put anything on LinkedIn for like about 2 or 3 years because I didn't want
Wow.
anybody to know my corporate background.
So you went to sort of that entrepreneur stage
Yeah.
a little bit there. You said one thing, and I mean, you talk about helping females break through limiting beliefs, but you
Mhm.
worded it differently then. You said you had to face your stuff
Yes.
with her and with what you were doing and what you'd had previously. What was some of the stuff you had to face? Maybe some of your limiting beliefs early on.
Okay, so back then I had no idea what a limiting belief was,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And when I say face my stuff, it really, when I look back to back then, that was child's play compared to what I've had to face as an entrepreneur.
It's
But I
funny,
really
isn't it?
had to look at how I was showing up. This whole part about, feeling like I was working around the clock. Why isn't anybody recognizing me? I
Wow.
realized I wasn't being a team player, or I wasn't showing up the way I needed to, or I didn't have the leadership presence, or um, I I never had any ill intent. However, I could bowl you over like you wouldn't believe because I'm thinking, let's just get the job done, right? And
Sure.
I would start my emails with just, I wouldn't even say hello. I would just go into it. So I
Yeah.
had to learn how to be a little more, I guess, courteous.
Mhm.
um, Not that I was intentionally rude. I just didn't think about
Maybe that
the,
was that work ethic that you'd learnt through your dad and through that
yeah,
sort of just go, 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 get it
yeah.
done
I
mentality.
had to
Yeah.
learn. And what's ironic, and her and I talked a few days ago, not a few days ago, a few weeks ago, we came full circle. We had a conversation. One of the things we worked on a lot was me becoming a consensus builder. And
Okay.
in a corporation that is so, so, so important, your career is dependent on how well you can build consensus.
Mm.
That's the death trap of an entrepreneur, though.
Wow. Super interesting thought. Definitely. Yeah.
And then I had to unlearn all that as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Okay. So how do you unlearn that stuff? Like, I mean, I feel people that are listening along here, they might be thinking, wow, okay, I've never thought about it as a consensus, that that's what I'm aiming for every single day in my workplace or family, etc. How do you break through that and flip it on its head?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually did a whole YouTube video about this too,
Cool.
right?
Okay.
Because
What's the
it's
video
really,
called? We can send some people there
I
as well.
can't, you know what? They all have different names. This is
Got it.
bad. I can't remember. It's on my channel. I
It's
think it's
yeah.
three things you need to stop doing to make money. And I believe, yeah, I think it was that one.
Right.
Because if you're, a lot of your success habits as a corporate executive will hurt you as an entrepreneur because in corporate, you're trained to be very methodical and
Sure.
planning. Like we would plan in June what we were going to be doing the next June.
Wow.
You can't do that as an entrepreneur.
No.
Things change, right? And so this consensus building was always about making sure that every stakeholder had a say, had an
Mhm.
opinion. And by stakeholder, I don't necessarily mean somebody that actually was impacted by it. If they were politically
Totally.
impacted or they felt they had to be included in the meeting, that it was all part of it. So after 5 years of really getting really, really good at that and getting to the top in that world, when I came out, I didn't realize where I was looking for consensus. But it would be something as simple as not putting on LinkedIn what I was doing because I was worried what people would think of me.
Sure.
Um, Not investing in what I needed in my business because, my friends thought it was crazy, or not stepping into, I think the hardest part for me when I first started too is I did what other people said I should do because
Mm.
I didn't want to disappoint them instead of going after what I wanted to do. And so it was always a way of looking for permission. And I see that with so many of my clients where they're afraid what their mother will think or their friends will think, or if they put a boundary up and they don't realize they're actually looking to get consensus. They're looking
Yeah.
to get somebody to say, hey, you have permission, but you don't need it. And that was a really hard skill to unlearn. And it was an expensive one, a really expensive one for
Super.
me.
Yeah, I've been on those tracks as well. And
Mhm.
recently, actually, funny you say, not needing to get permission. A good friend of mine, we were in the States together, and he had this
Mhm.
epiphany. This limiting belief just broken from, I think it was Brendan Bouchard. You'd be familiar with Brendan's
Yes.
work, and he spoke about not needing people's permission to go and do the things that you were created to do. And so
Yeah.
that week or so, we went to the tattoo parlor, and he got permission on his arm, and then it got crossed out in permanent ink to
Very
remind
cool.
himself that whenever he went to do something, doesn't need permission. It's
Yeah.
the journey of being an entrepreneur is one of risk and not knowing that next step often, right? You would have found that time
Often,
and time
like, I
again.
mean, sometimes it's minute by minute.
Yeah, right.
You don't know. And there's no guarantee, but there's no guarantee in a job either. So I think when
Totally.
we can actually make that shift and realize a job is actually not secure because you're getting permission from everything, right down to how much you make and whether you will
Sure.
still have income coming. As an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, if you're willing to take the steps, if you're willing to learn how to sell, if you're willing to do the hard things, you can control how much money you made. And I think something for me that was really impactful, and it, I, so this is kind of vulnerable sharing this, but it's a truth, and it was a decision I made. Like, I wanted for years to have this ranch that I moved into. And as an entrepreneur, we're always like, you know, working on the marketing or the selling or building our business plus fulfilling our business. When we moved here and we started to, there was a lot of work that had to be done on the equine facility. I wanted to focus on that. And I wanted to, when the horses moved in versus having them boarded somewhere else, it was a huge life adjustment. How cool was it that I could choose to take a couple of months off of marketing and selling,
So
right?
cool. Yeah.
And so, yeah, does that affect my income? Of course it is, but it wasn't like an accident. I knew it was coming, so I could plan for it.
Sure.
And then I could plan to take it off because I didn't want to have to do VIP days or client onboarding or doing all that paperwork. I was just going to maintain the clients I had. I didn't want to do a ton of selling or a ton
Yeah.
of new videos. So we had everything ready to go. And you don't have that choice in corporate. You might get a week off. I was able to take, 3 months
Wow.
and really just, I'm not going to say take the foot off the gas because I was very prepared going into it,
Mhm.
but to really make a decision that I don't have to be doing this. And then when we were settled, it was like right back at it. And so the choice of how much you want to work or how much you want to make and how you can prepare, you can't do that in a job. And so I think, people might think there's risk in entrepreneurship, but there's so much more control and freedom over your own destiny.
Yeah, you talk about freedom in everything, all of your messaging and language
Hmm.
everywhere online.
Hmm.
What is it about freedom that is so desirable coming out of a corporate into this world?
So I think we sometimes think of freedom, and I mean, this is a big part of it, what we do with our time and to have the money to do what we want, whatever that money is for anybody. Some
For
people
sure.
might be millions, some could be hundreds of thousands. But I think freedom really starts within to begin with. And losing the fear of what other people think, freedom from that. It's a permission thing.
Sure.
And it's just you call your own shots in your life. And
Yeah.
so whether that's not worrying what other people think, not worrying about the money, being able to choose how much you're going to work or how little you're going to work, um, it's really like that's just freedom when you get to choose.
Because there's sort
I,
of two types, isn't there? There's freedom
yeah,
from, and then there's freedom to.
yeah.
So what sort of things, I mean, with the clients that you get to work with, what are some of those things personally for them maybe that you can share? What's a freedom from that?
So the biggest one is freedom from what people think.
Right.
And I see that time and time again, and it comes up
Okay.
in different ways. And a lot of times, when they're worried about what people think, does get to a core wound or a core belief, whether that's lack of love, lack of security, self-esteem. And you'll see them making decisions that will literally cost them money because they don't want somebody's to be mad at them
Wow.
or they feel they're not worth something. So like a prime example is not terminating an employee that should be terminated or
Sure.
putting boundaries on a client that wants scope creep because they're so worried they're not going to like them, or not asking for the sale because you're
Yeah.
worried somebody's not going to like you. So that's where I'll see like they don't have this freedom from that and they don't realize how much they're affected. So we have to do a lot of deeper work before we even get to the freedom from that fear, but to like what
Sure.
that core wound is for them to help them overcome that first, so then they can start taking the steps to, um, it's not like you just wake up one day and say, I don't care what people think. I mean, it's a
No
journey,
way. Yeah. You can say
and
that as
and
many times as you want in the mirror, and you got to work through some stuff to finally get there.
I just had to do that recently, right? I
Wow.
mean, it's something I'm always doing where I realized, wait a minute, I've been making a decision and inviting something into my life that is not serving me
Sure.
because I'm worried about what this person thinks and they actually have no impact on my life. And that's facing your stuff and
That's
walking
the
your talk,
truth.
right?
Yeah.
And being open to realize it's not a red pill, blue pill. It's like you're doing it all the time. Like
If only it was a
that's a
red pill,
journey.
blue pill.
Yeah. And so with my clients, we'll start there, and then it's obviously a journey for them to do that. And then, but it's not easy. So if they have a relationship with somebody, if they've fought their whole life to feel accepted, then being rejected is going to be hard. So it's
Mm,
one step at a time. We get to the core wound. We might do some whole brain activities to help them transform that
okay.
belief. And that's where it's like a super learning process where you actually involve your body in the meditation because you
Right.
cross both hemispheres over.
Wow.
And then you have to act, right? You have to take action on your beliefs. And so a lot of times too, we want to make sure that there isn't a secondary benefit to a negative belief or something, or a fear that they have. So for example, the secondary benefit to not selling might be that they don't have to work as much, right? So you
Okay.
need to really understand what's motivating them. So there's a
Right.
lot
So,
of that freedom
okay.
from
Yep.
that happens. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. I've never looked at it with a secondary benefit. So a primary benefit of maybe not wanting to sell would be maybe either rejection, what they might think, they might not like you, and then the secondary
Yeah.
may be that they have to work. Like,
And sometimes those secondary benefits can be so minor. And
right,
when it's pointed out, like it feels ridiculous, but
sure.
it's not. Because
Okay.
if it is causing subconscious stress, it will stop you. And I like the example I'll give people when they go, "What do you mean a secondary benefit?" And I
Yeah.
will tell them like a story from my own life. Again, with the horses, one of the exercises, I don't know how familiar you are, like where you lunge them, you put them on a 20-foot line and let them run around you in a circle, bucking
Okay.
and jumping, all kinds of
I've
stuff.
seen that happen. Yeah.
And so I actually used to be genuinely terrified to do that, like
Yeah.
terrified. Like I couldn't even be in an arena with a horse doing that because I years ago had one turn and run on me. So it triggered something.
I couldn't be in an arena either. So
But I had to do it if I wanted to look after my own horse. But
totally.
when I was scared, um, it was so easy for me to hire people because you can pay somebody $20, they'll go do it, done. Well, Nafissa's terrified to do this, so let's help her out. Well, I I'm also an NLP practitioner, and so when I was taking my certification, I NLP'd a whole bunch of fears out of me through the through the course.
Okay.
And so one of the things we worked on was this fear of lunging my horse, and I could be in the arena when it happened, but I still wasn't having this ability to do it, and I had to dive deep into the secondary benefit. So you know what that secondary benefit was? When it's pouring rain and he needs to do it, I don't want to be out there.
Right.
And
Okay.
it's a lot easier to ask somebody because I'm scared, not because I don't want to be in the rain. So
Okay.
then, you do an exercise, whether it was this example or with a client on something small, like do the pros outweigh the cons, and just to get clarity for your subconscious mind. So I had
Sure.
to work through that, admit it. Now I do it all the time. I'm not afraid
Okay.
at all. But there was a subconscious secondary benefit
Okay.
to being afraid. So
Wow.
entrepreneurs can have that in anything.
Totally.
That
I'm
like
thinking
they,
there's a lot there for me that I need to go back and look over because I know some of those primaries
yeah,
that are maybe obvious, right? When
yeah.
someone's listening along, they're probably the ones that are just coming to mind. I don't want to do that or I can't do that because.
Hmm.
And then those secondary. So someone listening, how without, if they never get to come in contact with you, which they should in their lifetime, how do you dive and ask yourself a question or discover or unpack what some of those secondaries are? How do you get to that level of thought?
Really simple question. What are the disadvantages if I reach this goal?
What are the disadvantages if I reach this goal? Okay. And is that just a process of elimination?
Usually people know. Like
Okay.
sometimes they'll stop and think, but I've never heard anybody say I don't know.
Sure.
Usually either there's none, like none, or
Yeah.
you'll say, well, yeah, then I would have to work, or I'd have. It's that resistance, right? So
Sure.
that's where that resistance comes up. Like we all want to make more money.
I'd have
The
to pick
resistance.
up the phone. I'd have to, send
Yeah,
that controversial or that confronting message
yeah.
or okay.
And I work with muscle testing too, so I know if there is one or not,
Okay.
because they can say it, but their body's not going to lie.
Ooh.
So,
I,
but there
I
usually is.
really,
Even if it's little.
yeah, I really want to talk about horses. I want to get there in a second because
Yeah.
I think this is something really fascinating. But we've just talked about freedom from. What
Mhm.
about freedom to? Are there secondary benefits or obstructions
There
on that?
can be. Well, I would say it's more like not a secondary benefit because the benefit is to
Sure.
not achieving it,
Okay.
but there could be a reason not to do it. So when we go freedom to, I tend to think of that as what is it we want to create.
Okay.
And so a lot of times that freedom to, um, here's a really big one, and I hear it all the time, and I've gone through it, is can I do that again?
Right.
So we might have this freedom too that, I bought a ranch, or a client, one of my clients enrolled a 6-figure client, or I've created this and now I can go kayaking, right? We have all this stuff of freedom too,
Got
but
it.
then there's the fear of, what if I don't do it again?
Hmm.
Or there's the fear of, what if my husband doesn't like the new independent me?
Yeah,
Or what if my family doesn't accept it because I'm out doing my thing and they're stuck where they are and they're not making choices. So
totally.
I wouldn't call that a benefit, but it's definitely like a pullback, right? Like a
Hmm.
pullback to not achieving it when we go to.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so fascinating. Hey, tell me more about these horses. They from everything. I've got some friends that are sort of in the valley close to me, good friends of
Mhm.
mine, and they've got property and horses. And I just know the effect that, and they're high level entrepreneurs as well, the effect that it has on them. Tell me about your experience and how you sort of came across in working with horses and business owners. And I think you got some stuff sort of up your sleeve coming up in the near future too.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm an accidental horseman.
Okay.
I I always rode trail riding as a kid and in high school, and then when I moved to Vancouver, I kind of put it on hold. I had nowhere to go ride, and then I started to trail ride again, and I ended up almost in a wreck. I was on a runaway horse.
Wow.
Got off that horse, didn't get on one for 15 years, and I always missed it. And so I started to take lessons again, but I was never like a horse person. I just rode on someone else's horse in a trail. Like, I mean,
Sure.
you're not even right. Like, you're just sitting there, right?
And it just walks along and maybe a trot.
Totally, right? And so when you have a runaway, you have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And so I started taking lessons, and then the horse that I was riding, my teacher retired, and so she sold her lesson horses. She didn't have a home for this one because his owner gave him to her and he kind of abandoned him. So
Wow.
myself and another student took him on, and I was working up in Alaska at the time. So I would live in Vancouver, work in Alaska. So I always call, like, she was a primary parent. I was the dad that just showed up and wrote the check. Like, I'd show up on weekends and go for a lesson, and I never really got involved
Okay.
to a big degree. And then she ended up getting her own horse, and I was stuck with this horse. I didn't know what to do. And he was a bit of a challenging horse because he's got a lot of personality, and he's a very emotional I know this now. He's a very emotional horse. He
Yeah.
bonds very deeply, and being a lesson horse and a trail horse, he was passed around from person to person, so he never made
Sure.
that connection. So it was difficult.
Yep.
And so I felt really bad. I thought, I can't give him away. I can't sell him. I can't bring someone else in. I have to figure this out. And I was tested to my limits. I was scared. I had a lot of things I had to confront. And
Wow.
I was at a barn where things were all done a certain way. And I'm very much about naturally doing things. And
Mhm.
so I started to study natural horsemanship because I felt like I was feeling like these animals are being used like um, pieces of equipment. And I don't
Sure.
mean that badly, because I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but I just felt like my horse had been treated like a farm tractor or something.
Yeah.
And what if I could get to know the horse and know his psychology and learn different things? And so I started to study natural horsemanship, and it changed my world.
Wow.
So I had to confront a lot of my own fears. I had to get over things, build this relationship with the horse. I had to learn boundaries. I had to learn to ask for what I need. I had to put myself in situations that scared the you know what out of me. And physically, because I did not know what I was doing, and this thing weighs 1,000 pounds.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I had ups and downs, and then I started to really love it, and I saw how I transformed. I never was really a good rider. I
Mhm.
was very cautious. I would ride all the time. I would take lessons, and as I got more and more into this, I started to really like it, and I started to wonder, like, well, can I have a place of my own horses? I still had no idea that I was going to bring them into my work.
Okay.
I didn't know the two could coexist.
Right. Did you
And then,
realize that, sorry to cut you off, but did you realize during that process, you knew you were working through stuff psychologically? Could you feel it at that point without knowing now what you know now, that he was also
no,
working through stuff?
well, I could see that he was,
Okay.
but it wasn't until I read a book by Linda Konoff. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's
No,
written a
I
book,
haven't.
The Tao of Equus and Riding Between the Worlds. And
Yeah.
it's very, very ethereal, very spiritual. I mean, I'm all into the woo, but this was really woo even for me.
Right. Yeah.
And I started to understand how horses help people transform through this. And then I started to see things through a different lens. But I
Sure.
still didn't have the belief that I could do it, because I was just an accidental horseman, even though I was
Got it.
learning all this stuff. And so I remember when I first started working with the mentor I was working with today, he's just said to me, well, do you want to work with horses or do you want to be a leading coach in the industry? And I felt like he was asking me to choose. I mean, you take the question from where you're at, right?
Hmm.
And I got really mad at him.
Like,
And
why can't
then
I do both?
I was like, yeah. And then it was like, wait a minute, why can't I do both? And so then I started to pursue really working with horses as co-facilitators,
Wow.
because I'd experienced it myself. And they're incredible mirrors for what's going on in your life. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I've
Wow.
witnessed it with my colleagues, with my family, where they can tell you things because the horses live in the present moment.
Sure.
So it really helps you get centered and present. They're prey animals, so emotional incongruency. So you're pretending to be happy when you're not happy on the
Mm.
inside. They pick up on that. They want nothing to do with you. They can tell if you're feeling confident in like what you believe. Like you can
Uh-huh.
muscle test to find out if someone believes what they're saying, or you can have
Sure.
them lead a horse. You'll find out
Oof.
the same way. um,
Now, yeah, this is something very interesting to me. The fact that have you started this with your clients, or you've just been testing this for a long time?
Well, I've been working just with myself and
Yeah,
friends and stuff
of
with it,
course.
and I have been studying, and
Sure.
we are launching it now. So I mean, I have
Cool.
done it, but
So,
not to the degree I want to. So we're fully launching it. I actually have someone coming up from Mexico for her first Equine Alchemy
oh,
VIP day in a few
that's
weeks. So
awesome.
it's going to be so
Congratulations.
exciting. Yeah, I know. I'm really excited. So I've been training. Um, so my horses don't know how to. The horses don't need to know how to be coaches. They know, right?
Yeah.
But they need to know how to behave with somebody at liberty, how to have patience. And so
Yeah.
I've been working the last few months training them how to just stand still and
Sure.
how to approach. And
Okay.
so, yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to
Yeah.
market the what out of it, and
Yeah.
it's going to
Now,
be
I
amazing.
mean, I don't understand horses anywhere near the level that you do. I've ridden some, I do love horses, but I can understand from, and maybe someone listening that can't relate either, can maybe relate to dogs. They
Hmm.
can sense fear or confidence, and
Hmm.
they will tell you very quickly whether or not that they want to be friends, right? And is that
Yeah,
a similar setting to how horses can behave, but on
it
a much
is a
broader?
little bit. With horses, though, you can actually be upset, but they
Okay.
need to know you're upset.
Right.
And I've seen it happen, like whether it's in my training or with friends when I'm practicing. If you're around a horse and you're talking and you're not emotionally congruent, they're
Right.
turning away, they're not comfortable. When you get to the place of honesty with yourself, they know it, and you'll see
Wow.
them blow out, lick and chew, turn
Sure.
around, and it's hard to explain, but when it happens, it's so magical because something just
Okay.
happened there.
And that's
It's
because you're aligned. You're both aligned.
your insides match your outsides,
Yeah. Okay. And one
and
of the
and
things, oh,
their
sorry.
lives depend on it.
Wow. Yeah.
Because you think about it, if a bear is just walking by in the field, or a mountain lion, and he's just had a big meal, the horse isn't going to care, and that mountain lion's going to be, or the bear is going to be all casual and happy.
Yep.
Um, when it's hungry, it's going to act that same way too, but it's hungry. So
Sure.
the horse has to be very in tune to that emotional incongruency. And if you're getting it on the woo side, like they can pick up on that energy.
Yeah.
And so it's very powerful with humans.
And do they have the longest standing relationship with human beings on the planet? Is that?
I wouldn't know.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, this was a conversation we got into because I was talking about you to my good friend and mentioning that I can't wait to talk about this subject. And so we're talking about them being sentient beings
Hmm.
and on that level. One of the things that or I read that you're going to do or you've taken people through is you get them to state their financial goal and then walk alongside the horse. And whether they do or not, how that works out, the horse knows if they're confident in that and believe in themselves. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Absolutely. So it would be more like, have you ever heard those exercises where you write yourself a letter, like it's 6 months from today, and
Yep.
I've achieved my goal of 100 grand in 6 months
Sure.
because I picked up the phone, I called people, I did this, I did that. So you're going to tell this story. Like you're going to write it, you're going to get comfortable with it. Then you're going to lead the horse and tell the story.
Wow.
So if you want to get to the energetic piece, can the horse pick up on your energy? Yes or no? Like, I mean, it depends what you believe. I believe they can. Like, I really
Yeah,
do believe
I believe
ascension,
that.
and they see your higher self, so they can call BS.
Hmm.
If you want to get to the science and the mechanics of it, um, and this is where like a real experienced horse person could trick this unless they were
Got it.
coached into it properly.
Sure.
um, your body really is your subconscious mind. It reflects everything you're thinking. So if you're not believing what you're
Fascinating.
saying, even if it's not that visible, you will be shrunk back a little bit. You will have
Yeah.
some hesitation. To a horse, somebody leading them without confidence is very scary. They
Huh.
can't trust them.
Wow.
Or if they're the type of horse that's disrespectful, then they think I don't have to listen to you. So it's one or the other. So, and you'll see them kind of lollygagging along, and you kind of know, yeah, that person's not really convinced of their story.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
And so then what step do you take from there? Like,
Or we just go back into coaching, and right, whether
yeah.
doing belief change or say to somebody like, okay, so I've noticed the horse isn't following you. Is there something in here that's not resonating with you?
Mhm.
Because it's, I mean, coaching's just, it's digging, right? And
Sure.
you're really peeling the layers of the onion. And so it's up to the client to do something with what they find, but
Totally.
this is the indication and how we can get in and we can ask more questions and bring awareness. And it's awareness that allows transformation.
Wow. Awareness that allows transformation. I love that.
Yeah.
And how many times then would you take, depending on the breakthrough of your client, how many times could you take them through that process with the same horse saying the same story?
I personally probably wouldn't do it more than twice, because
Got
you
it.
also have to take into account the emotional safety of the horse, because they will take on a lot,
Yeah.
right? And we have to really treat them, if we're going to treat them as sentient beings. They're not tools in our practice. They're not an assessment or a quiz or a pendulum. They're a living, breathing thing, and they will take on that emotion. So
Got
we
it.
want to be very careful with them. Like, for instance, with my pony, he's an amazing barometer of your energy,
Wow.
because he gets really, I like to say, he has no respect for your boundaries, but he's clear on his own. Like, he is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, he's clear on his own.
Yeah.
And he's skittish, and I'll find if I even change my energy, like, he's gone.
Wow.
And
Okay.
he's my pony, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if I work with him, I can't work with him in his paddock. I have to take him to a bigger space, so
Sure.
that if he's scared, if whoever shows up scares him, that he can get away, and he needs to be able to get away. So we have to be fair to them too. And it's really cool, because I mean, that's going to be really confronting if you just walk in because he's really cute and this little cute thing wants nothing to do with you.
Yes.
And then we
Totally.
can say, okay, so what's going on inside? Like, what are you feeling? How are you feeling? Why do you think this pony ran away?
Wow.
And it's really hard for people to think they did anything, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because, but my favorite quote, and is by Leland Val Vanderwall, and if you've heard of him, he was Bob Proctor's mentor,
Right.
where he says the degree to which a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth they can accept about themselves without running away.
Oh,
And
that's
so
massive.
horses are non-judgmental mirrors, but they are mirrors, and they're going to tell you.
Nonetheless, got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the one time, I've only ever been bucked off once, and I was in a mood like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and I ate dirt. So
And was that when you had the 15-year break, or has that been since then?
no, that was been since then. It's
Okay.
actually was really funny. It was right around the time I made a 6-figure commitment to a mentor, the same day, and I had never done anything like that, and I was so like,
Confused. Is it right? Is it wrong?
is
Should I
it
have
wrong?
faith?
And
Do I
then
trust
my
it?
horse threw me on the ground that
Wow.
day.
There you
And it
go.
was really funny, because those were my two biggest fears, was that kind of a money commitment
Sure.
and falling off my horse.
And you did
And
both of them in the same day.
on the same day, like, I got it over with. And what really transformed my life were the words my riding coach said to me. Now, she's young enough to be my daughter, so
Sure.
I was like, can you say that to me, right? So I get back on, I'm devastated. I'm like, I've been working so hard. I was finally getting good at riding, and she's looking at me and she goes, you think you were a good rider?
Slap.
I'm like, what? She goes, all you've been doing is focusing on not falling instead of learning to ride. Now
Wow.
that you know it won't kill you, I think you're ready to begin, or something
Whoa.
to that effect, right? And I was like, whoa, like,
Yeah,
how
that's
does that
big.
apply to everything in our
Sure.
life?
So do you recommend then in your training that people should get bucked first before they move forward?
No, I don't think so.
No.
But I think the idea is what your fear kills you won't. I mean, in my work with entrepreneurs, there'll never be any riding. It's all done on the ground. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
and I prefer not to ever be bucked off again. I mean, my body doesn't handle it that well at almost 50.
Sure.
So,
And did you was that a question that came to you when you got bucked off? Oh, is that the worst that can happen?
well, what was funny was, as it started to happen, and I was holding on for dear life, I realized I was more in danger staying there.
Sure.
And I actually made a conscious decision. I heard the words "let go"
In that moment, yeah.
in that moment, and I just let go, and I
Yeah.
went off. And it was, and then it was, of course, it happened.
Yeah. There you go. Oh,
But when I look back, it all had to do with the energy I brought to that lesson, because I was
Yeah.
so wound up. So when I say horses are mirrors, it's not always pleasant what they show you, and they
Mm.
show you.
Oh, well, it sounds like it. I'm afraid now to go back to my friend's place and look
So,
eye to
so I
eye
don't
with
want
a
to make
horse.
anybody afraid, right?
No, no, no. No, you're
Nobody's
not.
going to get hurt here. All our horses are safe. It's just that was my experience with my own, like in riding. So, um, so
No, I
things we
love
want to make
that.
sure we do is check our energy, make sure we're calm, come from a
Sure.
quiet space. Do we give the horse enough space to get away? And that's my job as a facilitator, right? To make
Yeah.
sure that there's lots of space for the
Yeah.
human and the horse.
Oh, I would love to step onto your ranch and experience that. I think I
You
would have to
can.
confront a whole bunch of stuff before having that first conversation with the horse, which is, even though I haven't met your horses, that's already a mirror, right? To know that I know that there's stuff there if I'm going to act in true confidence that I have to deal with. So
Yep.
can't imagine what it would be like actually walking alongside one as well.
But
Uh,
there's nothing more magical though when they follow you
wow.
at liberty and willing, like when you feel that being in
Mm.
sync with them, it's like it's incredible.
Yeah. And are you leading them with anything, or are you just literally
It
walking
depends.
along?
It
Okay.
will depend on the entrepreneur, the
Sure.
horse, the like I mean, you have to, as a facilitator, have to be very aware of everything
Mm.
going on.
Yeah.
And so if it's, I think that the person can handle it, to walk with them without it, we'll do it. Otherwise, it's with a lead rope,
Yeah.
and it's a lot harder to lead a horse without a rope.
Sure. Okay.
And
No, definitely.
so
Yeah. I'm
and
just
so
thinking about that.
sometimes just even emotionally for the client, you don't want to set them up for something like that that is really that
It's
difficult.
difficult. Yeah. Okay.
And so it's because then they wouldn't feel like they succeeded. So it's not just, there's a lot of emotional safety involved as
Yeah.
well.
What are you still learning from your horses currently?
Currently, boundaries,
Okay.
boundaries.
And how do those boundaries that you learn from your horse then transpire into your business?
So, and this is, thank you for that question because it's a great one. So one of my things that I struggle with is, if people are nice to me or I want people to like me, even though I work on people not caring what people think, that is going to be my core thing that I have to be aware of. So if my horse is coming and nibbling at me and not being respectful, I have to ask him to move away,
Right.
and I feel bad, but that's not polite behavior and it could
Sure.
escalate, right? Like it's just he's not respecting my boundary. So how do I ask him to move away without feeling bad, without having guilty energy, without having angry energy, just
Mm.
asking him to respect that space? And so when you bring that into your, like my business world, it can be like, well, how do I, like, let's say, like, I mean, clients, right? In
Totally.
coaching, some of them will really be coming into your space.
Yeah.
They're looking to plug the umbilical cord in somewhere. So, and that's not, I mean, that's not, I'm not speaking about any clients in particular, but just in the coaching sphere,
We've had those experiences. Yes. Yeah.
right? So how do you ask them
Mm.
to back off without hurting their feelings, with being
Sure.
kind? And you have to protect your emotional bubble as a coach,
Yeah, definitely.
just as much as you have to protect your physical bubble with a horse. So
That's
but the
huge.
feelings are the same.
Yeah. I'm going to feel bad in this moment, but I know that it's best for not only the client, but also myself as well. Yeah.
And when you do it more with the horse, you start to stop feeling bad,
Sure.
right? And it's just a gentle, you don't have to hit them, you don't have to squawk them, you don't have to yell at them, and they actually appreciate the boundary, because if they get worried without a boundary, so they
Right.
like to know that.
And do you think that because when you start to do it more with the horse, you feel less inclined to feel whatever that feeling is? Is that just because humans and horses do have, do have their differences? Like you can work on the horse first before coming over to the client?
Well, horses live in the present moment, so if you set that boundary, they'll respect that boundary. They're not going to be sitting and thinking, do you know she pushed me and she used her middle finger? Right? Like they're not going to go that deep in it, right?
Wow, that's a huge epiphany as to,
Right.
yeah, okay.
And so it gets easier to do it. And I think sometimes when we set boundaries with people, we worry about a whole lot of stuff that's not actually going on in their mind. And so
100%.
it helps us to come into the present moment too.
Okay. Oh, wow. That is huge. You know, that just connected the dots from the start of our conversation when you said horses live in the present to just now when you brought that story and that comparison to us as humans thinking, oh, she said he did, this happened 3 years ago. That's massive. I
Yeah,
love that.
and there's none of that with them. So it
Yeah.
really helps.
Okay. Fantastic. What is the best experience you've seen with family, client, somebody else alongside a horse thus far?
Alongside a horse, the best experience. Well, there's been a lot. I've seen some very moving things, just confidentiality. I don't want to speak
Sure.
about that particular instance, but what I can say is this wasn't necessarily a best experience. It was a powerful experience. This was
That's
a
a much
very
better
troubled,
word.
yeah, there was a troubled person, and I didn't really know about this horse work. I started reading the books
Okay.
afterwards, and the horse wanted nothing to do with her.
Right.
And I didn't know. I thought the horse was being rude. And then we found out a little while later that she was really having a lot of trouble.
For sure.
And when I read that book, I was like, wow. In that moment, I had an opportunity to say, what's going on for you? Because it was really, really traumatic what was going on for this girl. And it was happening at that time, and the horse knew.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He wanted nothing to do with her. He was as polite as pie about it. Like, he just turned his head, he moved
Uh-huh.
over sideways. But I'm like, what is wrong with you, Chip?
Yeah, right.
But he could feel the emotional incongruency because on the outside she was okay.
Sure.
In terms of best experiences, I think some of the things I've seen are when people are afraid, because there is, I mean, for horse people, when you're around horses all the time, you might hear things about like I'm talking, getting bucked off or whatever. That doesn't happen a lot, right? Those are
No, of
extremes because we're doing an extreme sport. Like
course.
when you're working with them in this field, you're not. And a lot of people that come to work with horses have no idea how gentle they are. Like, they'll see the wild stuff on TV, or they hear these, road stories or war stories,
Yeah.
and they have this fear.
Hmm.
And that fear is also fears that could be a metaphor for other things. And so when you see them relax, when they blow out, when they relax, and they feel so empowered, and they realize that if they can do this in a situation where they're actually, like, it's physically fear, like, well,
Yeah.
picking up that phone call is really not that hard. So I love seeing that
Okay,
aspect.
cool.
And I love it when I see people, like, when a horse knows something's wrong, and
Hmm.
they just come and they just gently come and poke at you, and the person just goes, how did you know that?
Wow.
um, it's pretty incredible. I had an
Yeah.
experience once when I first started learning this work. It was a few years ago, and i ha- I used to be really shy, believe it or not. And so I went to where I was supposed to go, and it didn't look like a horse place. It was this big, big mansion on a hill. And
Wow.
I got so intimidated. And I'm like,
Sure.
I don't think this is the right place. And then I couldn't find the address. I didn't see anybody. And I was in my stuff. Like, I was totally in my stuff. I walked up the driveway. I didn't see anybody. And I'm like, no, I'm trespassing. So all this story is going on in my head, right? And I leave. And as I'm going to my car, all of a sudden there's a horse right there.
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
how I didn't see him before. And I just looked at this horse and I said, am I in the right place? And he turned around and looked at another horse, who
Oh,
then turned around and looked, and all the people I was looking for were right over there.
oh,
Like, I was
that's
so cool. It
incredible.
gave me goosebumps.
Yeah,
Like,
wow. Oh, that's insane.
and I'd been up there and I didn't see the people. So, because I was in
Wow.
my stuff, I couldn't see what I
Yeah.
couldn't see.
Yeah, you had tunnel
And
vision.
and I believe, and maybe it was coincidence, but I believe those horses were showing me where to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's a wild chance that they all look and turn to the other and point you in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy to connect those
And I was
dots.
like, how did I not see those people before?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it was a
that's
pretty
incredible.
magical experience. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. What about in terms of spirituality? What have horses done for you in that regard? Or did you have a form of spirituality prior? How has that changed? I'm not sure. Where are you at?
Oh, this is. Did you say we have 3 hours?
Yeah.
No, I'll sum up. So I was raised in a very religious household. So spirituality was a wound for me to
Sure.
heal, because I couldn't separate the two, religion and spirituality.
Totally.
And it was just no. no spirituality, no God, no universe, no
It's easier
spirit.
not to open that than it
Yeah.
is just to move
And
forward.
ironically, I was not having too many results in my business when I thought that way, right?
That's
So
just
I
a small
decided
snippet in there for everybody listening along.
it's true because
Totally.
I was
Internet's just frozen. I've got a picture of you. I can't hear you anymore. What has happened? All right, welcome back after the ads break. Hope you enjoy. Got a drink of tea or something. We are back. Nafissa's internet or power just had a full surge, and
hmm
you're still alive, which that's awesome. Let's
which is good.
which is a
So
good thing.
we were talking spirituality, right? So
Yes.
I found that really funny that it was right at that time, and what I was just about to admit before everything went black was my first putting my toe back into spirituality was at a equine facilitated retreat, and
Right.
I don't do things lightly. I went to shamanism.
Wow.
I went to it. I went to a retreat with a shaman and journeyed, and did the other world journeys and did a few things. I had my journey horse. I don't know if I have it here. Um, no, it's not here. I would have shown it, but
Yeah.
we had a talisman that was created and blessed by the horse, and
Right.
that pushed every boundary I had. And in fact,
Wow.
that story I told you where the horse found me, I was in so much resistance. It was actually that shamanism and horse workshop. So there was so
Oh
much
wow.
internal resistance. Like nothing's a coincidence, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Including the power blowing. So, but that was the start back to realizing that I do have a spiritual side, that religion and spirituality are different things.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my own horse, it was through other horses that helped me through the journeys, through the visions,
Mm.
um, to actually start to embrace that other part of me, which at that time
You
was
kept.
another part. And
Yeah.
now it is me, because we are spiritual beings having a human existence. So it,
Definitely.
and that's kind of around the time things really started to take off for me, when I
Okay.
really embraced like everything, because we have our intellect, our emotional, and our spiritual side. So
Yep.
we need them all.
Wow. That's a big sort of night and day type transformation there.
Yeah.
Really cool. How do you, is that inbuilt within your program that you'll take, or is it an option when people
No,
are?
I mean, I would not consider myself at a level where I could take people on that
Sure.
journey. I'm still in learning myself. However, when I do work with people, we do dive into the womb. We do work a lot with universal law, and some of the work that I do with the belief change does involve energy focusing. And these are the type of things that I can't even believe I'm saying and would not
Sure.
have said in corporate, because that would not have built consensus. um,
Totally.
but it's impactful, and I've seen the results in my clients. I've experienced the results myself, and so yeah, I think it's a huge part of our success. And this is not a judgment when I say it, but I've seen people that will say, like, I don't believe in a God or spirit or energy. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in it. I just had, like, I couldn't go
You had
there.
a
I didn't know
closed
what.
door.
Yeah, because it had bad vibes, but there was still a
Sure.
belief that something existed.
Yeah.
And those people that say that and say there's nothing else but us, I see them struggle, because you're not putting out to the universe, to spirit, to God, like what you want to create. Like, so how can you attract back those things
Sure.
if you're not putting it out there? So I think
Yeah.
the spirituality is a huge part of our success, and money and spirituality and achieving everything you want, they are not separate. It's all part of the same journey, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I think as well, there's a something that comes with admitting that, like, sure, we can do things that are kind of cool and achieve some stuff, but ultimately, like, when we zoom out from the planet or we see things en masse, like, really, we are just tiny ants running around, you
Yeah.
know. And there's such a bigger picture out there that has put and orchestrated something, into what we have today, and we're just scratching at the surface, right? Um,
Totally. And I mean, I think we've all had experiences where we think about somebody and then they phone us or
Totally.
message us.
Yeah.
Um, I remember it was a few years ago, I was driving out somewhere. I used to go to this one area in my early 20s, and it was a long drive from where I lived. And my husband and I were driving by there, and all of a sudden I was, just taken back in time, right?
Yep.
Okay, early 1990s. And I remembered this one person. It's just one particular person I remembered because her and I had dated the same guy and then we bonded afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So we had stuff in common. And I remembered her. Hadn't seen her in 20 some
Wow.
years.
Yep.
And it was around lunchtime. And I thought of her, and that was it. The next day, I get a Facebook message from her saying, so weird, I was having my lunch yesterday and I thought of you. It was like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure you had some conversation after that, right?
I was like, you're kidding me, right? Because I was driving by such and such place and your face came to my mind. It was right around lunchtime. And it was just, in 20 years, I hadn't even thought of her.
Wow.
So that's not a coincidence.
No,
right?
totally not.
Yeah.
And have you guys connected since then? And
We've just kind of stayed in touch through Facebook. I mean, because people are all over the world and stuff.
Sure.
But it was just, I found it a really neat, like, your left brain and your conscious mind needs proof, I think,
totally,
to really understand some of the unexplainable things. So when that happens, you go, yeah, it's happened, right?
Yeah, it's easy to say that we can believe in something, but still sometimes, a lot of the time, we want to see it, to believe it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Super cool journey. It sounds like that you've been on and still on, which is really cool. Same with myself. And tell me, as we sort of maybe bring things to a close here, like you got the ranch that's up and coming, and you said you're about to launch that. What is the next 3 quarters look like this year?
Next 3 quarters look like? Well, so just on the name of the ranch. So you said you have to see it to believe it. The name of my ranch is Believe and See, because I believe you have to believe it to see it.
I love that.
Believe and See Ranch. And the horses are part of my work. It's not all of my work. I mean, I work with entrepreneurs to help them make money, but I think the money's a doorway into a person's soul when we go deep. So bringing the horses into the work, that's going to be a big part of the summer work for the next little while. Cool. And winter, I don't know, like I like to work a lot less in the winter because of the less daylight hours so that I can have time outside with the horses. The weather's usually pretty okay in the west coast of Canada, not always. But yeah, that's kind of where we're really bringing the two together. We are having we have some clients having their VIP days. I have someone coming up for a 2-day retreat. In the summer, we'll be having a few group retreats here. And it's just a natural evolution of, we'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah, cool.
Taking it one step at a time. And if anybody's listening, I mean, the one thing that I think if you could take away from this was just like the craziest, biggest dream. And if I were to go back to that whole thing about consensus, when I would tell people about it, they'd look at me like I was nuts. You're scared of horses. How are you ever going to get that money? Do you know how much real estate costs in Vancouver? What do you know? And I didn't even know that I wanted to bring them into my work. I just know I wanted a ranch. And then when I thought I'm going to bring them into my work, people really thought I was crazy. And I did it because that was my goal, my passion, my purpose. And if you have one, like whoever you are and what you're listening to, that is your soul's calling. If it's nagging you and you can't go a day without thinking about it, do it. Even if you have no idea how you're going to do it, just take the step, right? And I think that's more than anything, more than what I'm doing, if I can give people that to hold on to, just take the next step and it'll happen, no matter how crazy it is. Now it just seems like it's normal. 3 years ago, I made someone talk about going to the moon, right? So
yeah, right. So cool. And I was just thinking there, believe and see, no BS.
Yeah, that too. There's that too, the BS buster.
That's so good. One day I hope that I can step foot on that ranch.
I would love it.
And say g'day as an Aussie. That's what we sort of do.
G'day, and I'll say A.
And you'll say A, right.
A.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Hey, what would be, I think that's huge for anybody creating and coming up with ideas and that has a dream, to know that someone with success is still going, I didn't know how I would be here, but now I am. And I'm still looking at stuff that I don't know that's how it's going to happen, but I'm going to get there. I think that's massive. Is there something that you would tell your 20-year-old self to do differently, or maybe to think differently if you could go back?
I think what I would tell my 20-year-old self is, don't believe everything you think.
Don't believe everything you think.
Okay. And the other thing is, decide what you want for your life and then figure out how to make the money. Don't let the money decide for you.
Wow, love that.
Because if you do, you'll be looking at a physical thing that you see limited versus your internal self. And when you start looking for what you want, you will find the way to do it. If you go onto my Instagram page, I have one for the ranch, and you scroll all the way to the beginning, and you see what a mess it was out there, like a mess. And the work we've done, I didn't even know this place existed a year ago, right? I had no idea how, like, we were still living in our other house. And it happened so quickly when it happened because it was focused. So, like, just don't let the money make the decision. You have to get clear on what you want, and you will figure the money, you will figure the resources, you will figure out how to become that person if you just focus on that. So that's what I would tell my 20-year-old self. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Don't limit yourself. Oh, Nafissa, so cool. Oh, it's been awesome hanging out despite power surges and spiritual everything happening at once.
That's so cool.
You are incredible. Thanks for hanging out on the show. Thanks for all your wisdom and all your input.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to connecting more and more as time goes on.
Absolutely.
And hey, if others want to connect with you, where can they find you? Where should they come say hi?
Best place is my website, nafissashireen.com, or they can hop over to my YouTube channel, which is also Nafissa Shireen, because I'm hanging out in those two places. Yeah. Super
cool. Make sure that they are in the links in below, wherever these podcast is up online. Been a blessing chatting. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Look forward to coming over and saying, hey, sometime soon.
Absolutely. The horses would love to welcome you. They would.
Nafissa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan.
Damn, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I had making it. And you know that friend that popped into mind while listening along? Why not shoot them the link and send them some love so we can help people grow in their personal and business lives together. And hey, if you'd like to connect with me personally and find out if or how I can help you in your business, jump over to icreateordie.com and let's connect today. Until next time, this is Ryan Bowles. Go well and bye for now.